Good afternoon, folks. It's Thursday, March 11th, is that it? And the third week in Lent. The sun is back out today after a day of rain yesterday, so it's always better with the sun. Shane is here filming and Chucho is with him, so if you hear snorting and chewing, that's Chucho, not Shane, or my stomach. As I mentioned last week, the Gospels for these 3 Sundays, this past Sunday with the Samaritan woman at the well, this Sunday with the man born blind, the healing of the man born blind, and then the following Sunday with the raising of Lazarus, they form kind of a packet of catechesis, of teaching for those who are being baptized into the church at the Easter Vigil. Kind of a journey of encountering Christ and Christ being opened and revealed, and then Christ bringing new life. The woman at the well encountering Jesus in a chance meeting, the revelation, the opening of the blind man's eyes to the grace of God, and finally the gift of new life that Jesus offers, which is expressed through the raising of Lazarus from the dead. So what I'd like to briefly comment today is this movement toward, the removal of our blindness, or what we seek, our eyes being opened during Lent, and opened to what, Richard Rohr, I found a helpful thought from him as I was reflecting on this, and he said that human beings in this case we don't naturally see Jesus. We have to be taught. That state of being unseeing, Saint John Chrysostom would say, or Saint Gregory would say, sin is being sin is being blind, not seeing Jesus, not acknowledging his presence, being blind to, closed to the difference that his very presence makes in our lives. And what that means is essentially, of course, that God is always present to us. Jesus is always with us. But how many days do we live through? How many hours do we live through of not seeing him? In that bigger arc of life, of course, we're talking about conversion, and really, accepting that constant presence and companionship of God with us always. But in the course of a given day, how many moments are there when we don't see Jesus is with us, and therefore, slide into despair, or slide into fear, or slide into anger. If only we recognized, as Jesus says to the woman at the well, if only you recognized the gift that is being offered you. If only we recognized in all of those crazy moments of our day that Jesus is at our side. You know, that's I'm sitting here looking at the school, and that's, you know, I find myself time and time and time again when our scholars are at Mass, reminding them that what Jesus wants us to know is that he's always with us, so that when we're having a bad day, or when you know, we don't do well on our schoolwork and feel bad, or you know, someone says something to us that hurts our feelings, how important it is to know that we're not facing those things alone, hard as they are. You know, they're made lighter, or we're able to carry them more readily, more ably, because we're not carrying it alone. You know, and practically, even for me, it's like if there are things on my calendar that I am not looking forward to, and that, you know, thank God, doesn't happen every day, but it happens every week. You know, a meeting that's going to be difficult, a confrontation with someone, a phone call that's going to be hard, you know, a difficult funeral, whatever it is, you know, if I know that I'm not going into that meeting alone, that makes a difference. That makes a difference. And how often I forget that, even after practicing Christianity for as many years as I've practiced it, after being a religious professional, you know, how many times I choose to face things alone. And again, as St. Gregory of Nyssa, that's who it was, would say, that is sin. You know, not recognizing, not opening one's eyes to the very presence of Jesus. It occurred to me this past weekend at Masses. As you know, we've begun to open the church for those who want to attend Mass, you know, and with social distancing and all of our COVID protocols and all of that. But now there are people on Sundays and Saturday afternoons who are with us in the church to celebrate the Eucharist. For my part, of course, and from my perspective and my vantage point, that makes all the difference to celebrate not kind of a cavernous, empty church, but with the community. But the fact is that throughout the pandemic, I've been celebrating the Eucharist every week, and, you know, a few days during the week. So I have not been absent from that sacrament. Whereas for many folks, many of you, you haven't been able to come. You haven't been able to be here. It's one more thing that we've had to give up or sacrifice because of the risks, or because of the risks to help. You know the story. And for many of you, that means still not being able to come, you know, until we get through this thing, which may be a while. I'm trying to think of who it was who said, you know, Flannery O'Connor, the writer, says something to this effect, and I think she was quoting an uncle who had converted to Catholicism, but she said, if indeed it is her, there's some, what is this Catholic thing? It's something about that bread. There's something about that bread. And so to be absent from it, perhaps you've come to know that more deeply. It's not magic. I mean, Jesus is just as present in the world, in spirit, without that bread, present to you. But what does that bread do? Well, like any good sacrament, what that bread does is say, here he is, look, see, remember that he's here, remember that he's with us. Remember that you're not alone. Jesus is as close to us as that Eucharist is in our bellies, in our body. We take him in to remind us that Jesus is that close. That's the work of the sacrament. And so to be away from the sacraments for us who are Catholic, and certainly other traditions who have a sacramental liturgical life, there's something about that bread that makes him more present to us, more real to us, it's a human experience. Like the sacrament of reconciliation, for example, which we celebrated last week with those children who are going to be making their first communion, and soon we'll be celebrating with those young people who are going to be making their confirmation, just as a way of reminding them of Jesus' presence in that sacrament. People say, why do I need to go to confession? Because I can just confess to God and God forgives my sins. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. God doesn't need me to turn on and off the spigot of forgiveness. I don't have that kind of authority and power. But what the sacrament does for us, and I believe the sacrament of penance, of reconciliation, is a jewel in our sacramental tradition, often celebrated very poorly, and people have had horrible experiences of the sacrament. I get all that. But it's such a jewel because it makes Jesus' love and forgiveness as close as I am to you. I have the privilege of saying, of hearing, in some cases, some of the most painful and secret and uncomfortable experiences of people's lives, or things that people are carrying. And I get to say on behalf of the church, God takes that from you. You've carried that long enough. Let me carry it for you, Jesus says. And the sin is forgiven. It's just a basic human experience that to confess that weakness, to hear a word of love in response, releases us from its binding us, from our being bound by it. There was a 5th grade, our kids making the Eucharist are, the confessions I heard, the children are like in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, a variety of ages. And there was a boy, I think he might be in about 5th grade, who said, oh man, that feels good, to have been able to say whatever he had to say. and he just, in his kind of freedom to say whatever came to his head. And we know the freedom of that when we really do release it to the Lord and give it up. The sense of consolation and peace that comes. Sacraments open our eyes to that. That's what we miss. That's what many of you are missing in not being at the Eucharist. And so, is Jesus still as present to you? Oh yeah. But we need to open our eyes to that and keep, especially in this season of Lent, keep calling ourselves back to, as Rohr says, we have to be taught to see. So practice that seeing. That's the lesson of this fourth week of Lent. Our sin is not seeing. And in the case of this man, we're in the 9th chapter of John's Gospel. All the law, the legalists were wondering, was it his parents' fault that he was blind, or was he born blind, or what did Jesus? None of it matters. His eyes were open and he saw Jesus. He experienced the grace without knowing how it got there. So, let's pray God this week that we will begin to see in all those corners of our life that perhaps we've been blind to His presence. God bless you. Thanks